Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening and welcome to Blog Talk Radio. I'm your host this evening, Bonnie Bradshaw. Our guest tonight is author Jim Rogers. Welcome, Jim. Jim Rogers did not set out to be a coach and an author, or at least he's convinced that he didn't. His first love was music and the music industry. After a 25-plus year stint in the recording industry and 2 failed marriages, he realized that if he wanted to be successful in love again for the long term, that he'd have to do some work, more like a lot of work. Thus began a new chapter in his life. Over the course of the past 10-plus years, Jim has done a lot of work. He's read a lot of material, dated extensively, shared with and learned from many friends, and made a lot of observations, trying desperate facts together to reach a greater understanding of the dilemma faced by those trying to move forward with their heart in midlife. After writing many technical articles to simply get enough money for an airline ticket to see his son in the early years following his divorce, Jim really never thought much about writing or his writing abilities, even though praised by his editor at the publication for which he wrote. It was simply a means to an end and understood at the time. During one of his relationships, he had the idea to start writing a book, and after 2 scuttled attempts, realized what his first book needed to be. Yet, to this point, it was all for fun until 2 writer friends took a look at what he was writing and could not believe what they were reading. With their encouragement, Jim continued to pore over the experiences of his life and write more and more. His comprehension of the issues of the heart is unique for an average man with no formal psychological education. Beyond writing and publishing his book, Jim has written a series of ebooks and developed a 4-part course that's been designed to help others heal and find love for their lives. These will be available sometime later this year. Currently living in Arizona desert, Jim is establishing his new career as an author, midlife heart coach, speaker, and someone who works to help others heal their hearts so that they can be filled with love. He still has at least 10 more books and many other things that he knows that he will develop and write. Welcome, Jim. I'm so glad that you're here today, just in time for Valentine's Day.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, Jim. I'm so glad you're here. The recording we did last night and put it up on Blog Talk, and it seemed really slow. So my apologies.
That's okay. That's okay. No, you have, by the way, the just so everybody knows, there's an offer at the end of this. It's a free ebook, and I just sent you a copy over Facebook. So
I got it.
Do with the subject at hand. You did. Good. Okay. Great.
So, Jim, you and I have talked many, many times, and we've Skyped, and your life is very interesting, and you've gone through typical things that a lot of people have, and you've come out of it with so much experience and a desire to help others. So I'm going to kind of turn it over to you now, and maybe our callers will have some questions, and I'll butt in from time to time. But I'm going to hand it over to Jim Rogers.
Okay. Well, thank you, Bonnie. Before I get started here, I just wanted to give props to a really wonderful woman in my life, Debbie. And hi. Thank you so much for your support and your love. The topic of this is the grace of self-acceptance. And the biggest problem is, our biggest need is that we want to be accepted. When a woman says, I just want to be loved for who I am. What she's really saying is, I want to be accepted for who I am. And the biggest problem is that we can't give to someone else what we don't have ourselves. And so because of this, you see a lot of single people in the dating world all kind of stumbling around looking for someone to give them something that they don't have themselves. So everyone's looking for something that none of them have, and this is why things tend to not be successful overall. And the grace of self-acceptance really is about extending that unmerited favor. We perceive that we don't deserve this because we only want to accept ourselves when we're perfect. Guess what? It doesn't happen. So, the most important thing here is to look at ourselves for those things we like about ourselves and those things that we don't really care about ourselves, and we have to, or those things we'd like to improve in ourselves. We have to accept everything, period, everything. And when we can do that, that's the beginning of that road to self-love and ultimately to finding love with another.
That you're so right, because I look back at I watch a lot of television, and the dating shows and the matchmaker shows, and you look on the internet and there's so many people coming up with these little businesses where they're all of a sudden a matchmaker. And it's a shame that, people they feel like they have to go to matchmakers to be able to find that one. And I've seen so many where nothing is ever good enough. They just can't find that one. And you're right. Many times it's because there's something within ourselves that we're not happy with, so we're constantly picking apart another person, not realizing that the work needs to be done on our inside. Because if we can't love us, who is?
Yeah. Well, that's exactly true. And people will probably laugh at me because I love to watch The Bachelor. I love to watch The Bachelor and The Bachelorette simply because I like to see how we're supposed to be adults when we're in our 30s, but we're not. We're not really functioning adults until we're in our late 30s, early 40s. And for men, you'd be lucky to become mature until your mid to late 40s, if then. So you have these people who appear to be adults who really are still adolescents, but they're grown adolescents. They don't have enough life experience to really understand what's going on. Plus, we live in a society that's performance-oriented. So our schools are established to teach us how to be great performers in the workplace, but we know nothing about ourselves. We know nothing about who we are, what our purpose is in life. We know how to go into the workplace, perform a job. We barely have the skills that we need to come home and kind of be okay. And then when we get married or live with someone or whatever, it just gets compounded because we don't know how to communicate. We don't know how to forgive because we don't know how to forgive ourselves.
That's what I was just getting ready to say. The communication between people, it seems like the generations coming after ours, they just don't have it. And now that we have all this equipment, the kids with iPads and the phones and the texting, and I know I talk to my kids a lot, and I've got a bill one day, and thank God that I have unlimited everything, because my oldest son, I about fell out. I looked at the bill, and if I had not, he did $600 in texting in 1 month. And I asked him, why don't you just pick the phone up and call them? He says, I don't call people. I said, why? Because I don't talk to them. Bingo. You have no communication skills here.
Yeah.
So it is hard to be in a relationship and not have communication skills.
I've actually watched a couple sit next to one another and text each other.
That's sad.
And that just doesn't, but the problem is, again, we're performance-oriented. We have all these gadgets, and we don't, we think they're really cool, but, put the gadget down and talk to one another and say, look, I hurt. I'm feeling really terrible because of this. But to be able to do this, again, you have to be able to look at who you are and accept who you are and love yourself and know how you feel, know how to express how you feel. And since we're performance-oriented, we don't understand these things.
That's true.
We don't understand where our pain comes. We don't understand what our anger is all about. Anger has three main sources: pain, fear, and unmet expectations. Most people don't understand their anger enough to know that they have the ability to reduce at least a third of their anger by changing what they expect of others.
And sometimes what they expect of themselves.
Well, everything, just your expectations, period. But yes, as long as you expect perfection of everybody else, including yourself, you're going to be really angry and disillusioned. But the second you let go of that and say, hey, you know what, it's okay. This is just life, and in the scheme of things, it's not really important. What's most important is to understand that you're loved and accepted just for who you are.
That's powerful. When somebody can actually feel that and, to feel that in their heart and their spirit and be totally accepting of their self and who they are and have the confidence, to show that. And then they don't have to worry about having somebody else love them. And they're always looking for somebody to love them. And I've noticed this a lot with, because I do foster care, and as these kids grow up and they age out of the foster care system, they're always looking for that mom or that dad that they never had, even though they're grown. They still want that acceptance, and they want somebody to love them.
Well, this is where an understanding of the divine is so important in life, because your worldview and, more importantly, your God view really determines how you perceive acceptance, how you perceive love. If your view of the world is demanding, or if your view of God is demanding and perfection-oriented and punitive, then you're going to look at yourself in the same way, and you're not going to accept yourself because you judge yourself, and you're always going to come up short. So one of the most important things in developing a real sense of self-acceptance is understanding that, that divinely you're accepted just for who you are. Everything, warts and all, the extra 10 pounds, everything, the whatever. It's all okay. But in that's not a license to be a jerk.
Amen to that.
That's not a license to say, hey, look, I can do whatever I want. Get over it. I accept myself. No, there's the difference between seeing those behaviors in yourself that are unacceptable and knowing that those are things to work on. Because just because you accept yourself doesn't mean you get a license to be a yut.
Wow. Yeah, you're right. And people, they need to know that, because one of the things that I'm dealing with a lot, especially with youth, is, and you can go back and call them bullies, but people, they're bullies out there, and they're not just kids in school, they're adults too. And I try really hard to look at it at the aspect, these bullies came from somewhere, and they're bullies because of a reason. And even I know adult bullies, and what caused that in them. And the reason that they're that way is because they're not happy, and they don't feel secure in who they are, and they find that happiness and security out of other people. Their fear of them makes them feel powerful in the way that other people look at them as if they're somebody special.
A typical behavior that people learn in difficult backgrounds is to tear other people down in an effort to build themselves up. And that's where bullying tends to come from. It's a learned behavior. I don't feel good about myself But if I tear you down, I'll feel better because I won't feel so low.
Exactly.
And that's the real difficulty, because we have a lot of people who grow up in a background where there's no esteem built at all. There's no self-acceptance because they've been torn down so much by those around them, whether, and if they don't have parents, then there's that innate inner guidance that's not there. It's like, well, what's wrong with me? If my parents gave me up, then what's wrong? Something must be wrong with me. Children tend to internalize everything that comes their way, and until they get the click, until they understand that it had nothing to do with them, it's just, that's their parents did the best they could. Until they get that, they're going to continue to view things that way.
Right, and they grow up and they're constantly looking and they're just not healing. And they've got to heal that inner hurt in order to live a life of abundance.
Well, yeah, and, I've went through that myself. When your parents don't get emotionally close to you, you tend to wonder what's wrong with you. And you carry that in as an adult. I did that. And before my dad passed away, my dad passed away early 2002. And before that, I was able to tell him everything that I always wanted to tell him. Kind of had a captive audience, but I got all the emotional responses that I needed. It was very, very, very healing. And I really understood from that point that it had nothing to do with me. It was him, and it was his stuff. The thing that's really important to understand is, as human beings, we only do what we know, and we're only going to do what we know until we know better. And then when we know better, we'll tend to do better. But most people alive today don't know better. They're doing what they know to do. And so it's really up to those of us who know better to model and show and teach people so that they can do better.
Right. And I told the kids I've noticed, and even when I was in college, they teach you the books, the book smart, but they don't teach you how to deal with people. So you can have an MBA in business, and you can walk into the corporate world and be made a CEO. But if you don't know how to deal with people, your crew, you're just not going to make it. It's going to be hard. And you're not going to hang on to good employees because they're not going to want to work for you. So they really should have, some type of class.
The big problem is we're a performance-based society. We teach people how to be productive workers in the workplace. It's human doings, not human beings. And there are so many more demands on a daily basis for us to be human beings instead of human doings, but the doing is valued over the being.
Yeah, the mighty dollar.
Okay, I refuse to vilify people who are wealthy. There's nothing wrong with being prosperous, but prosperous and wealth are two different things.
Right.
The problem is that people focus on one thing as opposed to focusing on what they can do with their wealth and prosperity in benefiting others. That's the doingness aspect again. But until society starts to understand that beingness is important, we won't understand that fundamental shift. And part of the real problem that we have today is that people have left critical thinking and reason behind over emotionality. So it's important to be able to look at ourselves and instead of being emotional, say, you know what, it's okay. I accept you right now just for who you are. And when somebody comes at you with, well, blah, 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 this, that, you know what, that's okay. That's your stuff that you're projecting on me. I accept me for who I am. And if I put more importance in your opinion of me, shame on me. Because the only opinion that really counts in all honesty, is my opinion of me. And if
That's
I give
right.
you more weight, if I give you and your opinion more weight over me than I give mine, then there is a fundamental problem for me to overcome or me to work on, which is knowing that my own approval of myself is all I need.
Inner peace, inner happiness.
Yeah.
I wish we could
Yeah.
all learn that. You know, we would have. I think we would put the psychiatrist out of work.
Well, you know, the part of the problem is that the things that we've the psychoanalysis really hasn't been around that long, and the things that we've really learned in society that people bat around now have only really come around since the early to mid '80s. A lot of the psychologists in the '60s, you had psychiatrists. Psychiatrists could prescribe drugs. You didn't really have psychologists until like the '70s. They weren't really prevalent until the late '70s, early '80s. And so the things that are out there teaching people how to be better people, in one way or another, are fairly new, and it takes a while for that stuff to disseminate through society. And there are aspects or segments of society who have a really difficult time accepting these things because they feel weird, So we're in the middle. We're in a very big upheaval in society because the skills that we need to really navigate life aren't there, and we need them desperately.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that's so true.
So, and what you're doing in fostering fostering kids is wonderful because kids really need to understand, that in spite of the fact that they were let go, it had nothing to do with them. But there's that fundamental gnawing in the background that says there's something must be wrong with me, and until they can really connect with the fact that it had nothing to do with them, they're going to walk around feeling less than.
And, some of them get it, but very few do.
Yeah. And the ones who do, the fact that you were there to help them out is what really made the difference.
Well, we've enjoyed all of them. We've had, I can't even tell you how many foster children we've had in the past 20-some years. But
Wow.
And we've adopted through foster care, and we have our own children. But it's been a blessing, and at times it's been challenging. But it's and my own childhood gave me the love and passion for other people to, and that's why I went the career path that I went. And we brought kids in from all over the world. Started off with being exchange parents and learning different cultures, then onward to foster care and adoption and all that sort of thing. And so people's hearts and their inner energy and their passion for life is the one thing that I've always fought for. And that's just what led me down the road where, that I have gone, and I enjoy every day working with people. And when you see somebody that's broken and you work with them, and then that one day that you see them come in with a smile on their face and they figured it out, it's just such a joy.
I was there myself. How far are we in this half hour?
We have 5 minutes left.
Okay, let me, before we have the big hand come down and cut us off, let me say, I wrote an e-book on the subject, The Grace of Self-Acceptance. And for those of you who are listening now, and for those of you who download this and want it, a free copy is available to you for writing me at jim@theartoflovingself, that's all one word, jim@theartoflovingself.com. And I will send you a free ebook about the grace of self-acceptance. And I'm really happy with it. It's actually going to be free for a short period of time, and then it's going to be part of a new series. I have 14 ebooks in progress right now. 4 that I've written, 14 in progress, and this new series, that's the Self-Love series. This one is the beginning of that. So it's an offer to take advantage of, because there's more about this in there. There's also some, it just expands on the subject a lot. And besides that, you don't have to listen. You can go back to it again and again and again and glean more from it. So just want to make sure that everybody understands that if you want the free ebook, Grace of Self-Acceptance, just write me at jim@theartoflovingself.com, and I'll be more than happy to send it to you. So there you go. I still don't have my site set up. I still don't have a lot of stuff set up, but I wanted to get this out there because it's just really important for people to understand this.
That's true. We got almost 4 minutes left, Jim. Tell us a little bit about you. I know in your bio it says you've had a couple of failed marriages and you had to find yourself. What's the biggest thing in life that you've learned through all of this about you?
That I have a lot more within me than I ever realized. It was just amazing. My career and my marriage my career and my second marriage tanked within 2 years, and I basically bumped into the walls of life for about 4 or 5 years, not knowing where to go, what to do, knowing that I had to reinvent myself, but just not knowing where or how. And this all just kind of came out of the blue. So
Go ahead.
Well, I realized that what I wanted to do was I wanted to help people understand the process of loving themselves and making a better choice in a mate, because I'd made 2 choices for marriage partners that just weren't right. And when I realized it was because I didn't know who I was, then things kind of started to add up. So I realized that what I wanted to do was teach people what I'd learned about how to heal, how to love themselves, how to become more discerning, how to date in a much more adult manner, how to look at some of the myths that are out there, and how to understand who they are and what it is that they're looking for. And it took me 18 months to develop this 4-part course. And it was originally going to be like an afternoon workshop, but when the thing hit 120 pages in one 3-ring binder, I went, ooh, well, there goes the afternoon idea. So, it's...
everything I start off thinking small, and it gets really big.
Oh, well, I just got to the point where I realized that this 4-part course was pretty much the pinnacle of this platform. The book Midlife Metamorphosis was the platform, basically, or established the platform for becoming your loving self, moving forward with your heart in midlife. And from that, I just realized that so many people are stuck in a similar manner. They don't know how to love themselves, and because of that, they don't know what to look for in other people because they don't know who they are.
Yeah.
So that's really what my work is about.
Give us that website again. We've got 1 minute left, and I want to make sure that everybody, if they didn't have time to write it down before, that they can do it now.
Well, to request the free ebook, it's jim@theartoflovingself. And if you want to learn more about my book, Midlife Metamorphosis, it's www.midlifeheart.com.
All right, and you have a Facebook page, too. We want to send people there, so tell them what that is.
That's just Jim Rogers. And you'll see Bonnie Bradshaw at
Facebook.com/Jim Rogers.
Yeah. I think it's 8, I don't know. Anyway, I'll be there. Bonnie Bradshaw will be a mutual friend.
And if you can't find him, come on to my page and he'll pop right up.
Yeah. So, it's been a real pleasure. I'm so glad that we got to do this, and, I'm so glad that I thought of writing the ebook because I think, I'm sorry I got it to you so late, but I think you're really going to enjoy it. And for all those out there, it this is something I really love to do, is teach. So you'd be more than welcome to receive a free ebook on the grace of self-acceptance.
Well, good. All right, we are down to 0 cents left, and Jim, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to come on to the Blog Talk Radio show, and I hope we can do this again real soon.
I'd love to.
All right,
Take care.
have a good day, Jim.
Hey, thanks, Bonnie. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.